later, but if yes, this meeting will be recorded. But if people happen to hop on later, we can catch them up. But my name again is Sasha, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Co-Director of Outreach and Research here at Simply Neuroscience. And today I have the honor of introducing AsylumConnect Junior Board members, Kelly Chan, Gaurav, Lalsinghani. Please correct me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. And Christina, Tong. So they will be sharing their journeys to careers in technology and going through a case study on what different technology roles are responsible for bringing a product to users. So I'll be introducing each of you individually, and then feel free to wave when I introduce you. But Kelly Chan is the technical program manager at Double Verify, based out of New York City, where she works on go-to-market initiatives to bring integration products to life. Previously, she was a program manager at Adobe, and outside of work, Kelly serves on the junior board member of AsylumConnect and volunteers as a pro bono web developer for nonprofits. Kelly is a graduate of Cornell University and is currently working on her master's degree at Johns Hopkins University. Thank you so much again, Kelly, for joining us and spending your time to chat with us today. Secondly, Christina is currently a senior product manager at Peloton. Previously, she spent 4 years as a PM at Google, and in her spare time, she volunteers at nonprofits applying tech to help the LGBTQ+ community, like the Trevor Project and AsylumConnect. She's from the Bay Area and studied computer science and politics at Pomona College. Thank you so much, Christina, for being here. We're so excited to chat with you as well. And lastly, Gaurav is originally from Houston, Texas, also from Texas as well, so it's great. They currently work as a sector data analyst for the DC Public Charter School Board, where they oversee issues related to charter school supply and demand, expansion facilities, and collaborative planning amongst other education agencies and nonprofits in Washington, DC. They have previously worked for the city of Los Angeles as well as the World Health Organization, and they completed their dual degree in political science and statistics in 2018 at the University of California, Los Angeles, where they researched the disparate effects of asylum protocol and LGBTQ rights on the status of LGBTQ refugees. They hope to go to law school in the coming future. Amazing. Thank you so much, Gaurav, for being here. We're so excited to chat with you today as well. Great. So this is going to be like an open Q&A panel for our speakers here. Feel free to introduce yourselves again, maybe elaborate a little bit on your journey and kind of what topics you might, the audience members might want to ask you about for this panel.
Yeah, so we actually prepared a slide deck. If you don't mind, we can share that and go through. I think I'll probably answer some questions first, and we can leave Q&A for the end.
That sounds great. Are you able to share your screen? Yes.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much for joining, everyone. Again, my name is Kelly Chan, and I'm on the junior board for AsylumConnect. Just a little bit about AsylumConnect. The platform is creating the world's first tech resource, we're a nonprofit, to facilitate the safe navigation of people fleeing persecution due to their sexual orientation or gender identity. Our platform is completely free. It's on the website and can be downloadable as an app, and instantly matches LGBTQ+ people with verified resources across multiple areas across North America. So on the slide here, you can see some stats that impact asylum seekers that are impacted, and also as well some of our involvement in the public and just honors as well. So feel free to check out our website or any of our social media. For us specifically, the 3 members here are on the junior board tech committee. So the junior board is a group of young professionals looking to give back to the community. We raise awareness and funding for the nonprofit. And specifically on the tech committee, we work on some technical related projects, either sharing the platform with any corporations or other nonprofits, hackathons, as well as recruiting for our technical team and recruiting for volunteers that help with our accessibility user testing.
So I think we can yeah, thank you for the awesome introduction in the beginning. I don't know if we have to go super in depth, but if any of you want to connect with us on LinkedIn, reach out with other questions, please feel free to do so. Yeah, I guess Kelly and Gaurav, did you want to add anything else to your intros before we move on? Otherwise, we can.
No, I'll just shout out. Christina has a really cool website that she had a slide before her LinkedIn profile. It's like just Christina Tong, so go check that out too.
Thank you for the plug. Well, so I think what we'll talk through today. One is kind of like in depth of what we kind of work on to give everyone an idea of like, what does a PM do? What does a product manager do? What does a technical program manager do? What does a data analyst do? And then I think we will give actually a hypothetical example of how a team would work together to launch a real feature that Netflix launched, but none of us work at Netflix, so we need to make this example. Like we have a best guess at how that development process went. We'll talk a little bit about the culture at our company, so I'll talk about Google. I think Kelly and Gaurav will cover the places they're working at. Then we'll also talk about our paths to tech. So what did it look like, and what did we do in high school and college, et cetera, to end up where we are today. Awesome. So just to briefly giving an example of some of the things that I worked on when I was at Google for 4 years. If you can imagine like your favorite restaurant and think about looking up that restaurant on Google Maps or Google search. You may have seen that restaurant like describe itself in its own words. Or you may have seen that restaurant posting like updates or offers or other info kind of like directly to that listing. So those are some of the features I was the PM for and kind of grew across different small and medium businesses globally. And then I also spent a chunk of time, on the, if you look at the right-hand side, this like shark, it's actually like an AR shark that you can view it in your room. So augmented reality is all about like taking virtual things and putting them onto like the real world in a way that makes sense. Like maybe it's like augmented reality walking directions or like augmented reality life-size animal that you might want to learn more about. I spent 2 years at Google leading our efforts to what we call productionized research. So taking things that are like in an academic paper and then figuring out how to launch them so that different phones can use those APIs to make really cool, useful AR experiences.
Thanks, Christina. So before I talk a little bit more about what I do as a technical program manager, here's a little graphic that people in my field use a ton to describe what our role does and why we're necessary. So here you can see there are lots of different approaches for how to build a tire swing on a tree. And each different role is contributing to this and what they think is supposed to be made. But there's not really alignment across all these different roles on what's actually going to be helpful for the customer. So that's where my role being a technical program manager comes in, is that we're the glue between all the different cross-functional resources and teams to make sure that everyone is aligned on what we need to make, what the customer actually really needs, which is a tire swing. And just a little bit more, the title I have can be different at many other companies. So you can be called a program manager, a project manager, sometimes even the business analyst or the product manager covers this role. So generally the function is what just bringing everyone together. So for the few things that I work on, currently at DoubleVerify. So previously I worked with quite a few integrations. So pretty much what that is if you say like Facebook is integrating, you can log in this stuff. I don't think this exists yet, but say you want to log in using your Gmail to Facebook, then there has to be some sort of integration between the two technologies to ensure that you can do that. So on a corporate scale, that's what I do for different technologies. Right now, we're working with Google's Campaign Manager with DoubleVerify. And previously, I've worked with a couple other types of integrations. And outside of that, I mean, what I do in bringing this feature to life is I create a lot of dashboards. You can see on the left there through like initiation planning, go-to-market, design phases. So all those stages are really important in pretty much making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing in order to ensure all the steps are being necessary are taken in the right order as well. Because when you're building a product, there are lots of different steps to take.
Thanks, Kelly. As Sasha mentioned, I am a data analyst at the Public Charter School Board. For those folks who don't know what a public charter school is, it's essentially a public school that, instead of being run by the district, it is run by an independent organization. So, for example, in DC, Howard University operates a math and sciences charter school for 6th through 8th grade. So different independent agencies essentially run these schools, and our board oversees the 100+ schools in the charter schools in the district. And it's about 43,000 students that are enrolled in those schools. My role specifically looks at program demand and some of the broader student patterns for charter students, and on the flip side, traditional public school students. So there's different programs such as like dual language immersion, STEM, arts focused, Montessori. And so my role primarily looks at where in the city there's space to open new schools, what programs are in demand, what grades those programs are in demand, and whether there's like a population increase or changes in the district that need to be taken into account for when recommending approval or denial of potential applicants that are looking to start schools in DC. And on the other side of that, so that is quite a direct like data to policy pipeline of my work. On the other side of that, we have some like independent analyses that I get to work on. So because my organization isn't really a tech oriented organization, I feel like being a tech focused individual there really allows me to set the agenda with other tech folks, and like there's an expertise that's asked of and expected from you. So there's independent projects that we're working on, understanding student commute patterns, if they're actually like walking by a higher ranked school on the way to their school that they're choosing, because you can choose any public charter school in the district to attend, whether there's a lottery system in DC to also determine school attendance and admission. And so understanding if that's working for students, and using like APIs to essentially figure out student commute patterns, and working with our data engineer to basically build those out. So there's a lot of independent projects, and then there's some policy work involved as well.
Awesome, thank you, Gaurav. All right, so we're about to launch into this hypothetical example, how a tech team would work together. So there will be parts where it'll be interactive. So we'll see if you all can help us figure out this potential case study. But let me set out some of the context. Okay, so hypothetically, we're a team that's working together at Netflix. Okay, now remember, none of us have actually worked at Netflix. It's hypothetical. There's no proprietary information that we're sharing here. But we will talk about like a real feature and development process that would likely have worked to get this feature. Okay, so let's imagine you're the team owning the homepage, this thing here on the left. And let's imagine that actually in this case, you're an analyst like Gaurav. And probably you're regularly tracking some of the numbers about how users are behaving. You may have implemented it, helped to define it, and you work with PM and TPM to define these things. And two of the metrics you might be interested in for the homepage is how long it takes someone to choose a show to watch, and how many people open the app and leave without playing anything. And that's sometimes known as a bounce rate. So I think we can say, it's good when people kind of choose in not too long, though maybe more choice could be good if they have a lot of things to consider. But it is definitely good when they choose something. So we don't want a high bounce rate at all. We want people to play something really quick. Okay, so we want both these metrics to stay steady or go down. Now let's say more and more movies and TV shows are getting added to the platform. And let's say you as the analyst notice that users are taking longer to choose, so that median time before play is going up. And more users are leaving without playing anything. So the bounce rate is also going up. Remember, up is bad. We want people to play quickly because we're using playing as a proxy for like a user getting value out of this. Okay, so now we're going to walk through potentially how the members of the team might diagnose this problem and work together. Okay, so first, I think we said the analyst helped to first notice the problem and in fact helped us to define those metrics and interpret the metrics that even let us know that there was a problem. And the next piece would be that a product manager might decide that these number changes are actually a high priority to fix. Okay, so we're gonna pause here, and the next the next line that comes up is going to be how the PM and the designer work together. So if anyone has a guess, please put it in the chat. There's no no judgment, right? Like all guesses are great. No guesses.
Christina, would you mind repeating the question one more time?
Yeah. So now imagine that the product manager has decided that these changes are like the changes in the metrics is a problem. We need to fix it. What might the PM and the designer kind of do next as like a next part of the product development process? Okay, 10 more seconds. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. So the hypothesis there would be like, hey, the homepage is too cluttered and too difficult to navigate. So we need to figure that out. Yeah, and that's actually great. So you're capturing the crux of the thing here, which is the next step is to form a hypothesis about why those metrics are moving the way they're moving. So one potential guess here, which I think is pretty related, Sasha, to what you said. But yeah, Quinn, that's a good, take more data from the viewers project. Yep, yeah, that's good, like personalizing the page more, right? So those are two hypotheses. One is page is too complex to navigate, and the second is like, the page isn't personalized enough, right? And so let's imagine that the hypothesis that we're coming up here, just for the purposes of this case study, is that users are overwhelmed with too many content choices, right? And then maybe the PM and designer would come up with a potential solution, which is what's a way for Netflix to choose for the user what they can watch? And that's actually on the same line, Sasha and Quinn, if your kind of ideas there, right? How do you make that simpler? Okay, and so in this case, the designer would then kind of visually design a potential user experience for Netflix to help choose what the user should watch next. And in this area, we would also probably be consulting the software engineers to figure out like what might implementation look like. Would it be like reasonable? And at this point, also kind of in Kelly's role, she might be thinking about like what's the schedule and the project roadmap here. Who needs to come together and who needs to do what to make this happen? And then finally, the software engineer on the schedule that was agreed on with Kelly and the team would probably code the solution. Okay, so one potential solution that could have been scoped in this process is actually a feature that Netflix launched, which is called Play Something. And this is a thing where you kind of click one button and it just like chooses a show for you and it just starts playing it. So it's kind of like the extreme of making the page easier to navigate and personalization. So the whole team has worked together. They launched this feature based on a hypothesis, and the median time before play is going down, and more importantly, the bounce rate is going down. So more people are playing, there's more value. We all celebrate. And so I think that's like a very condensed, like it's an oversimplification of how the product development process might go. I think it's kind of illustrative. Kelly and Gaurav, did you want to add anything else before we move on from the case study, or did folks have questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat.
I guess the one thing that I want to add is that even though this is a pretty simple feature, it's not uncommon for especially large corporations to take like a year to get something like this pushed out. It could look different in each quarter. It could change objectives anytime, depending on who's like senior leadership or whatnot, or the needs of the user. So this seems like a really simple solution, but it could take a really long time to go through the full process, especially with a lot of teams.
Yep. That's fun. Cool. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what the culture is at our respective companies. So I will go first. I've left Google. I'm working at Peloton now, but I've only just completed my 3rd week, so I feel I'm qualified to talk about the culture. So I'll talk about Google instead. One of the things, I joined as part of the Associate Product Manager program, which places you in a group of like 40 new grads together. You're kind of like, you have social events together, and they take you on this international trip, which I'm not sure the future of it with COVID, but there's a lot of team bonding, and they take us on this like around the world, like 4-country, 2.5-week trip. And this is a photo of us in, I believe it's China, in Shanghai together, a bunch of us with some of our PM mentors as well. The upper right-hand picture is kind of like team meals, and it's pretty collaborative and open culture at Google. It's very kind of grounds up as well, so you have a lot of responsibility. The bottom right is, I think, summer of 2016, I think, marching at Pride with Google. So I identify as LGBTQ, and Google has been very supportive of me being open and out at work, even to external partners. I think they're pretty no tolerance on like discrimination. I feel they have my back in that regard. Over to Kelly.
Yeah, thanks so much, Christina. So at Adobe, the 3 photos on the left were from my time there. I spent about 2 years at Adobe before moving over to DoubleVerify, which is where I've been for the past 3 months. And at both companies, there's been a lot of support for the LGBTQ plus community, which I also identify as part of. On the very left, you can see my friends and I from work were giving out fans during SF Pride. One of the best experiences of working at Adobe. Adobe also has a ton of social events all the time. There was always like free food and other goodies on a given day of the week. Sometimes they even have like DJs out. And then the group photo at the bottom middle there, we ran into our CEO, Shantanu, at the holiday party, which is really nice. And we got to ask him a couple questions and such, but it was really cool how approachable the senior leadership was, which I think is a really key part of both the companies' culture here. So I've only been working at DoubleVerify for, as I said, 3 months. So obviously during the pandemic, we're all working from home, but DV still is putting a ton of effort into virtual bonding. And I've gone through the program to meet people from around the world. So I've met coworkers from France, from Tel Aviv, from China. So that was actually just a really cool experience because these are people that I don't generally talk to, and they give us gift cards to hang out and get lunch virtually with people. So it's also a very cool perk to have.
So I work at a governmental organization. So the fund budget is a little different with public dollars, but we still find a way to make do and have a good time. On the right, there's 2 pictures. That's our entire staff, and our former executive director like treated us to a Nats game, or he rented out a yacht and had like a boat party with all of us. So there's definitely been like moments and times that like senior leadership has invested in like staff bonding and getting us all together. On the left, there's a picture of us all on Zoom chat with healthy things, because we did a biggest winner week where we had different tasks and a team to essentially encourage everyone to do different healthy habits. I'm there with an avocado. And then in terms of like being a place that's supportive of my identity, the school board has been like a great place and a great like place to be open and out. Before I worked there, there hadn't really been anybody that identified as non-binary or used they, them pronouns. It was something that I felt comfortable enough to voice at my time there. And you can see like in the Zoom chat, people have their pronouns in their bios, like people really took to learning about things. We had like workshops. So it's a very ground up family feel because it is a smaller organization. And so folks are really ready to step up in that way.
Cool. Thank you, Gaurav. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the journeys that we took to the like positions in tech that we have now, just as a so we can have visibility into what those paths might be. So for me, I went to Corona College in Southern California. I definitely thought I would be a lawyer when I first went to college, but I took a computer science class and really liked it. And that's why I ended up minoring still in politics, really like public policy. But I ended up enjoying coding. I think I was very like hooked by the intro class, which was like making games. So it was like very satisfying. But actually I ended up doing like a couple software engineering internships, and just the way that like they were like, one was in like, I was writing QA tests in like a chemical analysis hardware space. Another one, I was working at Cisco on like routers, and neither of those were like particularly exciting areas for me. And, you know, maybe I would have been convinced otherwise if I had like more exciting software engineering internships, but I ended up deciding like, I don't know if actually coding is how I want to spend my career. How can I use those tech skills in another way? And I've been doing kind of like student leadership and stuff for quite a while. I knew I liked to lead teams. I like to talk to people. I like to read and write like documents, strangely. And so I decided to go for a PM internship at Google. I really, really loved it, and then converted kind of to full-time product management after, and then have been kind of in that realm ever since. So technical background, but you know, I didn't, the SWE internships weren't the most fun for me. I didn't feel that I was the best at them. So I pivoted to kind of like another coding adjacent use of my time.
So like Christina, I also wanted to be a lawyer when I first went to college. Didn't know what anything in technology was about. So that's pretty funny. I started off as a business major. I actually started off at a different college than I graduated from. So I transferred in the middle of my college career. I started at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. Wanted to do the whole politics thing. I interned at an embassy and also a public government agency as well. So I did a ton of different internships in like government, media, ultimately finance as well. I ended up transferring to Cornell, where I graduated with a degree in industrial and labor relations, where many people either go on to become lawyers or go to HR or something, neither of which interested me after I pursued some internships in those fields. So I decided to take a look at some of the other classes I took as well, what I was interested in over the years. So when I was in high school, I actually took APCS and I absolutely bombed it. It was so bad that I never wanted to code ever again. And which is funny enough, because I actually graduated with like, I think 6 or 7 programming courses, and every single time I did really poorly in every single one of them. But I always learned something new, something that I wanted to do. So I think that goes to show that, like, you know, you don't have to be great at what you pursue as long as you're using it in a way that is helpful for what you're doing. So I took a gap semester in between transferring colleges to think about what I really wanted to do. I decided to join project teams on campus within the engineering school as well. Decided to pursue a minor in information science, which is where all the classes came from. And then I got my first tech internship at Adobe. I mean, They really took a chance on me. Didn't have like a strong technical background at all, and I didn't really need it to be a project manager or intern. But it was one of those things that was nice to have, because if you understand the technology, you can talk about it more and such. So I was fortunate enough to go back full-time as a program manager. Decided that I wasn't completely passionate about the products I was working with, which is why what led me to switch my jobs a couple months ago to a TPM role, which is a little bit more technical. And then I also applied to go back to grad school. So I'm in my second semester in my master's in systems engineering, which is a little bit more technical, but less coding intensive. So for me, it was really creating the balance between all my different interests, which has some technical elements, but then also is more so on bringing people together and really just bringing ideas to life.
And I am the one that actually still wants to be a lawyer, but I started off school as a bioengineer and thinking I would go into medicine. So I came into UCLA strictly studying like bioengineering, but in the back of my mind already thinking like, how do I squeeze in a double major with a bioengineering major, which was pretty impossible to do. And I found that I wasn't as drawn to bioengineering as I thought I was. It was the physics part that killed me. So I switched my majors at the start of my second year in college, and switched to statistics and political science. I'd always been someone that loved math, and I still do. And that was like, there was a great opportunity to code in statistics and also still retain some of like the interest in math that I had. And then having the interest in public policy, political science seemed like a good fit with my statistics major to kind of have one foot in both those doors. And so in my second year, I also had the opportunity to work in a political party research lab. So I was under a professor at UCLA doing like technical work and supporting some of the coding work she was doing, and as well as some of like the interviews she was doing with political parties around the world. And it really kickstarted my interest in research and doing my own research projects. So over my third year in college, I pursued a research program, and it lined up with UCLA has a program, as do several UCs in DC, where you can spend a quarter in the district. UCLA's quarter is you do a full-time internship and you take classes and you are doing your independent research. So, at the end of this quarter, you have a capstone research project. So as Sasha mentioned, that's where I studied the impact of LGBTQ policy and asylum protocol on the movement of LGBTQ refugees specifically, and then was able to do some more data analytic oriented internships. So that was working for the World Health Organization, and then working for the city of Los Angeles during my senior year at UCLA. And then those experiences and that kind of experience in working in these public sector, whether it be public health or government, led me to my work at the Public Charter School Board. And so that's where I have a nice blend of policy work, data analytics work, some coding, and some like data engineering as well. So get to combine some of those interests there. And now I'm looking to go to law school, hopefully in the future.
Well, thank you, Gaurav. All right, so it is Q&A time. If anyone has questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask them. We don't bite. Happy to take any questions. There's no stupid questions at all.
Great. And while people are putting questions in the chat, or if you'd like to mute yourself, feel free to do that as well. Just wanted to say a huge thank you again to you all for spending your time and giving this awesome presentation. I know careers in technology, at least for high school students, younger students, can be pretty ambiguous. Like students may be interested but don't know what a career in tech might look like or the different paths. So it's really amazing hearing how diverse your work is, and also how similar in terms of how supportive the culture may be, or the type of collaborative work you're doing. So it gave a really great insight, and I know I learned so much. So yeah, thank you again. I think we have our first question in the chat, so I can go ahead and ask this out loud. Rishika asks, what was the toughest part of your academic journey?
Kelly,
the entire journey was pretty tough, honestly. I think it's pretty hard to, like, I don't know a single friend of mine or classmate who didn't have a tough time in college, especially. Like, it's no matter what you decide to pursue, like, it's gonna take a lot of work and priorities in your daily life, balancing it with extracurriculars, a job, anything else, and just like life. So I think it really was the balancing part that was the toughest. And every single year had different priorities as well. So yeah.
Gaurav, do you have thoughts?
I definitely second Kelly's, second Kelly's balancing trickiness. I think something that is helpful in figuring out what it is really just in your first year. Like, I feel like a lot of people, there's like a general expectation that folks are going to change their major. So like going in with like, it doesn't help like if you're eyeing a few things, like even before you're starting your college journey, to like research like the different like major tracks for those majors, even if you're not necessarily considering a switch, and really looking into like what that looks like, and familiarizing with like yourself with the switching process. I know UCLA has like a pretty solid switching process, but I know other universities that have more students, it might be more difficult to switch your major. So just knowing what that process looks like and just having some openness to have those conversations with yourself too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, Rishika, to your question, I think I certainly found, so like I didn't study computer science at all before I got to college. And I think, I did find some of the classes difficult. My computer science curriculum was more theoretical. So there's like a lot of math and like theory behind, like the academic theory and like the proofs behind some of the computer science. And I found that like those classes were hard. Like I had to put in a lot of effort, like going to mentor sessions and working with like friends in my classes and stuff. I think it was, and to Kelly's point, kind of like it was hard work. It was required prioritization, I think. Like I went to Pomona, which is a very residential college, and even though it's in Los Angeles, like it's not like I left the campus and enjoyed LA regularly. It was like hanging out with my friends on campus, but also like hanging out was also doing homework with them. So like, I had a great time, but it was like not like there was no shortage of like work, just in terms of like getting over some of those tough classes. And some were more fun or less fun than others. I think, Quinn, to your question, like building off of Gaurav's point, like it's really different college to college what it looks like to have an interest coming in, because at Pomona College, we weren't allowed, or we weren't required to declare our major until 2 years in. So you could wait until like the end of your sophomore year to declare your major. So you could just like explore whatever classes you wanted. So for me, certainly coming in intending to be like going into law to a completely different profession wasn't that difficult because there was no like formal, like there wasn't a barrier to doing it, but at different colleges that is very, very, very different. And you know, you do take, like, if you're on a semester system, like 4 classes a semester, right? So that's like a lot of bandwidth you have to play around with different classes that you're trying to take. But it is going to be different. Like if someone was pre-med, for example, switching out of that or switching into pre-med, some professional paths are more like strict than others in terms of the classes they require. Okay. Yadu, if I'm saying your name correctly, please let me know. Does our switch in majors affect getting internships and jobs? Good question. Gaurav and Kelly, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I have an answer for that. So actually, every single time that I switched my major, and I had like probably 4 different copies of my resume at some point with like a different major or minor combination on each one of them. I mean, I ended up graduating with a degree that has almost nothing to do with what I actually do. So I'd say, like, first of all, like switching paths, like if it's say like junior year or even senior year and you find something else that you want to pursue, like it's not too late to pursue that. Like I pursued tech junior year. And I had like a finance gig like lined up for full time. I like knew exactly what my career could have looked like 20 years from now. I decided I didn't want that. So I had to kind of start over and reject my return offer to an internship, which was really terrifying. But with that story, it actually became a benefit for me because it was a great story to share with other employers. So with Adobe, I told them like, hey, I had a return offer to this other really big company. And I decided not to take it because this is what I really want to do. And these were the steps I took to gain some skills that would give me a better idea for what this job would entail. So in a way, it kind of made me different because a lot of other people applying for program manager roles, why they're coming from CS, information science, other related backgrounds. But for me, because my major was different, people were like, ooh, what does this mean? Like, what's your major? Why are you even applying for this job? They just were more curious about me in general and my, I guess, more wider scope of interest in the past was actually more helpful in understanding and learning new things. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was a huge pro to keep on changing my mind.
Yeah, I think I can add to this. Like sometimes it can affect you in the sense of like, let's say you're trying to be a software engineering intern, and maybe some of those are looking for someone who's taken a certain class before. Like they want you to take in algorithms, or they want you to take in data structures or engineering data structures before as a course. And you, like, being very honest, there is a class of things that they might not want to take a chance on you if you didn't take some of those specific classes. The class ordering does matter to some aspect, but it doesn't like shut all the doors or anything. Just being aware that there may be some internships where if you hadn't had the chance to take some of the classes because you switched later, like you may have to take it in a later summer, for example. Or sorry, you might have to, the internship might be available to you in a later summer after you've completed those courses. So I think that's one thing to be aware of.
Yeah, I would just second what Christina said. I'll just add that I think tech is really unique in the way that you can gather a lot of technical expertise outside of your college classroom. There's so many like online courses and the hackathon events where you can like essentially build like your answers to some of the questions that are often asked in technical interviews about group work, about times you've navigated certain technical problems. So there's just a lot of opportunities to get experience and also build up your skills outside of your college classroom. I know for me, like a lot of the code that I work with is like skills that I didn't necessarily learn through my major. It's things that I individually pursued and got good at.
Well, any other questions?
On the topic of like switching majors and keeping an open mind, kind of your academic journey, I guess like what questions do you guys recommend asking yourself when considering switching like a career path or like an academic journey? Because I know it is like a pretty bold decision, especially if you're like on a pre-professional track like law or medicine. So like what types of questions did you ask yourself when making that decision?
I think for me, like this is gonna sound super basic, but I literally was like, am I having fun doing the work that is closest to what I'll do in the full-time job? And for me, the answer was very clearly like no for software engineering. It was like, am I looking forward to going to work? But I see this doing, but I see myself doing this every day for 10 years. Do I feel energized at work? And the answer to those questions was no for software engineering. But when I did my PM internship, I was like, yes, I love going to work. I'm really enjoying going into the office and the stuff that I'm learning. I could see myself enjoying this for many years and excelling at it. So I think that's like, it was pretty clear to me when thinking about just like how it felt to be at that place.
Yeah, for me, I ask myself similar questions as Christina as well, but also I recommend talking to people within the field that you might be interested in. So throughout college, I talked to people within like government, media, tech, consulting, finance, a bunch of different industries, because I kind of wanted to gauge for these people, like, do I want to be like them in the future? They have like from like 2 to 20 years of experience. Is this a person who is like happy with where they're at? You can tell with some people talking about their jobs, like they're not super enthusiastic about it, unfortunately. Or maybe like, you know, just they decided that they want to pursue like other things, whereas some with other people, they are clearly very passionate about what they do. They like what they do. And you want that energy because your career is going to last decades. Hopefully you have some sort of fun, but for to be honest, at least from my perspective, like each job is going to have something that sucks. You just hope you're finding a career path that sucks less. So for me, when I was trying different internships and such, I just asked myself, like, what did I like? What did I dislike? And if there were more elements that I liked, then I was like, okay, this is getting closer to what I actually want to do. So through those tiny decisions over the years, whether they're through like projects or internships, anything else, like I think it gets you closer to eventually what you want. So this might, being a TPM might not even be my end game. There might be something that I want to take to my next career move as well. So it's just kind of asking yourself, like pulse checking, what do you like, what you don't like, what do you want more of or less of?
Yeah, I think the questions Christina and Kelly mentioned are great ones. I think one that I often fell into asking myself, but I don't know if it's the best question. I think there's a balance in terms of this question is, am I good at this? And you may not be like, I think you don't have to be the best at the program in your class or your cohort, but if you're enjoying it and you're seeing yourself make progress on the skills that you're trying to develop, I think there's a lot to gain there. I'd also just shout out, like, as someone who like doesn't have like a lot of lawyers in my network, that's something that like I'm interested in, and I've learned a lot about that profession. I think like a lot of people just YouTube vlog a day in the life of of this job, and that's just a great starting point to like understand what it looks like in terms of the day-to-day, and shadow someone essentially through like what's supposed to be a normal day in their work life.
Got it. Thank you so much. Another question that I have, I know like a lot of our hackathon attendees are either middle school, high school, or undergrad graduate students, but mostly high school students. And so I know it can be pretty intimidating, especially as a student interested in tech, with all the possible career paths. So how would you, or do you have any tips of advice that you would give to maybe high school students that are interested in technology on how they can explore the field as like a younger student, or what they can do to kind of familiarize themselves to see if they would like to pursue something in technology in the future?
I'd say like attending events like this and hearing about other people's careers, like that's a great first step. And there's so many resources out there. Again, like Gaurav mentioned, the day in the lives, like that's really helpful. I know there are some like designers and PMs and other technology role types of people out there that like to blog about what they do. I think that's especially helpful. Or they might have like blogs or articles online. That's a good like intro before you even like start reaching out to people. But I'd say like, you know, if you don't know anything about an area at all, like you can just reach out to someone on LinkedIn, like search designer in San Francisco or whatever, and you can meet up with someone or do like a coffee chat or a phone call, and just ask them like, hey, I don't know anything about what you do. Can you just tell me what you do? And maybe how I can learn some skills, maybe using Figma or like Photoshop, something like that, and see what they suggest, because every company is different. But the more perspectives you get, the easier it is to kind of figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, I really second Kelly's recommendation about going on LinkedIn. I think even for me, something that if I see like a job, or if I see someone that's in a job that I potentially would even want in the future, like clicking on their profile, seeing like, oh, this is the path they took. This is like, this isn't what I like may have like narrow-mindedly thought of as like the one path to get to that role. And seeing like, oh, these are like my ideal jobs and these folks have taken so many different paths. It's just like a great insight into the fact that there's not just one way to reach whatever your dream job is.
I don't have anything else to add to that answer.
Got it. Thank you so much. I definitely think as like younger students, it can be like intimidating to reach out to these people, but there is so much unlocked kind of potential information that you can gain and insight from just talking with professionals in the field. And we are running around 4 minutes left on time. So if there are any last questions, anybody here, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute, that is totally fine as well. And I don't think there are any new questions right now. So I do have one other question. I know that you all each individually talked broadly about like what you do, but I was wondering if you could give like a brief overview of like a day in the life, like what Gaurav mentioned before. Maybe like what does a typical day look like for you, just so we can get a better idea of what like, yeah, a typical day would be.
Yeah, right. I can do that for PM. I think one other thing to add, just like people are very happy to hear from students and like folks who are interested in their careers. So like, don't be scared of like bothering people on LinkedIn or like bothering people with cold reach outs. Like, you know, the worst thing is like they're gonna ignore you, but like usually like I get a lot of cold reach outs. I'm sure Gaurav and I do as well. And like I'm always very pleased to see if people are interested in like what I'm doing, talk to people. So like, and you know, you can expect a positive response from people you reach out to. In terms of day in the life, so actually, I think I didn't really talk that much about what a PM does. I talked about what I worked on. So the way I think about the product management role is it's my role to decide what we're building and why we're building that, and to define that for the organization, and then to like convince everybody that that's the right kind of thing to do. So deciding what feature it is, when we need to do it, and like why that's important to the company. In terms of like a day in the life, I think like I go to a lot of meetings and I talk to people and I hear them, and I'm asking questions to understand their motivations and trying to convince them usually of like some point of view that I have about what the product should be doing. And then I also spend a lot of time sitting there and thinking about what my point of view is on what the product should be. And then sometimes I'm trying to express that in documents and like literally writing like a Google Doc or like a slide deck, or like writing an email. So it's a lot of like forming an opinion that is hopefully informed by like having talked to users and people who are actually like our target audience for that product, and then trying to convince the organization of it. So it's a lot of reading and writing, talking and listening.
Yes, I can briefly share my day in the life. So as a TPM or program manager, I also go to a lot of meetings. Pretty much our job is to keep the ship afloat in getting the passengers to the port. So for us, the port is like the end product. And along the way, there are lots of things that break or need fixing. And for us, I would go to like a meeting and someone say like, hey, finance hasn't approved this budget increase or whatnot. And then I would have to reach out to finance and be like, hey, what's going on? Is there any way we can negotiate this, whatnot? It affects our XYZ teams. Or maybe I would have to talk to marketing and say like, hey, can we decrease the budget on this campaign so that we can put more towards other resources? And it was just kind of like moving things around, herding resources, like a lot of that type of thing in meetings. So that's kind of what my day looks like. It's a little chaotic sometimes, but it feels nice to solve problems.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of on the fly work that I feel like surrounds tech. I'd say my day in life depends, because we are an educational organization, depends a little bit about the time of year, but like most of my days, I'll start with a stand up with our data engineer just to ensure some of our data processes are running smoothly. If we have any data collection work we're doing, that's going well. There's a lot of fielding of data requests, maybe from our communications team and from other members of our organization. And then there's some advocacy work. So I'll be in meetings in terms of just like letting senior management or senior leadership know, hey, we need to be taking into consideration demand. We're opening too many schools, we're opening too few schools, or like sitting in on an application if that's the time of year that we're in, stating if there is demand for that school or not. So it just fluctuates depending on the time of year.
Got it. Thank you so much. It was super insightful talking to you both. And I, again, want to thank you for sharing your time and your expertise today. I'm sure everybody here has learned something, and people who tune in later on the YouTube recording, I'm sure will also take something away from this presentation. So thank you again for joining us. Our next session is actually the mentoring session that one of our panelists just hopped out into, and that's a separate Zoom link. But yeah, that concludes this session.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for your time. Bye.
Best of luck.
Thank you.